haven't done one of those yet. So you're going to inspire me. Okay.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. And if they get a little behind the scenes, that's okay too. So
Yeah.
anyway, it all works. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're here. Yay. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here. You are going to be so happy you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I write, I speak, I get to do so many fun things in life, but my favorite thing to do by far is to meet people, and I get to meet some extraordinary people. And today is my new friend, Jennie, the only person I've ever seen. Hopefully you're seeing this on camera, on video, who has color coordinated her books. Are your clothes color coordinated too?
Yes.
Yes. Oh yeah, mine too. Mine too. My dishes, everything color coordinated. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's the only way I can survive, the only way I can think. But so there you go. I love it. Jennie is the inspiration. Her story is the inspiration for this incredible book that you're going to want to go buy, as sure as the stars. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to show you a trick about it, the cover, which I think is so cool. And Jennie is just amazing. She is uh, done it all. I mean, she has the most inspirational stories, and you're gonna love it. And she likes strawberry lip smackers, so I know we're gonna be friends. So anyway, so Jennie, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun. Like I said, I already feel like we're friends too.
Yeah, great, great, great. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to talk about your story. I'm going to start back a little bit before the book story,
Sure.
and I want you to tell me all about 8-year-old Jennie.
Oh, 8-year-old Jennie was a bookworm, a Nancy Drew lover. When I was younger, we didn't really watch TV a lot in my family. I'm the oldest of 8 children. And so I was always cleaning, cooking, I just loved to read. It was my escape. It was like you could be anywhere, and especially with like the Nancy Drew series, or Trixie Belle. I don't know if anybody remembers those.
Oh yeah.
Boxcar Children. I was just like trying to figure out. It was like a puzzle you had to figure out, right? So I was always into like solving the mystery, and westerns, pioneer stories, historical. I was never really into romance or love for some reason. So isn't that funny? Yeah, so I love books. I would go to the bookmobile when it would come to town once a week, and I would get special permission from Mr. Day. I remember his name, to check out like 16 books at one time, and then I go to the library and check out 12 to 16 books, and I would read all those books by the time it all came around again. It was so heavy because back in those days, you'd walk to school. My mom and dad wouldn't pick us up. So I would literally be carrying all these books like 4 blocks from home.
Got a good workout. That's why your arms look so good.
Big ideas, big dreams. In a book, you can escape, and your imagination takes you anywhere. When you're watching a television show, which, I watch TV, that's great. But a book, you can just escape and use your mind and your imagination. You can just visit anywhere. You can go anywhere for free.
Yeah,
So
so true. You can
yeah,
travel the globe. You can travel to other planets, even. You can
yeah.
go anywhere.
It's
Yeah,
your imagination is just wide open,
it is. It
it's
is.
unlimited.
I know. I love it. I love it. So you like to read. Oldest of 8 kids. That's a lot of responsibility. My husband comes from a family of 8, or my husband's passed away, but came from a family
Oh,
of
I
8.
didn't know that. Okay.
And he was number 2. But the oldest, man, she could not wait to move out of the house. Like, she graduated from high school and she's out the door. Were you the same?
Yep, I was 17.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was a child, I had my perfect little neighborhood with all my friends, we lived down in the country, if you can say that, in Utah. It was this little farming community, right? And it was called Down by the Bamberger. And the Bamberger was named the Bamberger because it used to Bamberger Railroad when Promontory Point, when the East and the West met in Brigham City, Utah. There was a railroad that would go past. It was past our house, but they tore up the railroad tracks because the Bamberger train crashed years before. And literally old box cars and railroad ties were down in this wooded area called the Bamberger. So can you imagine just playing in that area, like the Boxcar Children, right? And these mystery series. It was just like, we're going to find a treasure. We're gonna, it was just fun games you could play as a child with my friends. And then when I turned 14, actually 2 weeks before I turned 14, we moved to Alaska, which was traumatizing because I'm leaving all these childhood friends in the Bamberger and we're going to the unknown. I had never seen the ocean before. And so going to Seattle, driving to Seattle, getting on a barge in your car with your family, all of us. My mom was pregnant with my baby brother at the time, by the way. And my baby sister was born in Alaska when I was 16. So that's a lot of kids to herd around. So I had a lot of responsibility cooking, cleaning, babysitting. I was babysitting when I was 9 for free. That's unheard of nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So, but the relationship I had with my siblings were like best friends. And my baby sister, my baby brother, I was able, I held them right after, close to after birth. And so we had this connection and their children, I was able to watch them grow up and get married, choose spouses, live their beautiful lives, and go to college, all the things. And then they had children of their own. They're like my grandkids. Like last night, my brother's son, he broke his arm, fell off his bike, and I was like calling him. I'm like, Charlie, are you okay? So it's kind of like I don't have grandkids yet. I have one on the way. I found out just
Yeah.
recently. Yeah. So my nieces and nephews, we have a huge family when we get together. It really stresses. This is funny. It stresses it's not funny, but I just have to say it's kind of funny because my mom, she gets so stressed out when we're all there at the same time. And there's like, what, 70 of us now? And I was kind of like, did you not realize when you had all of us, we were going to have kids and they would have kids? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
anyway, there's a lot of us, but we're very close. We're closely knit. We pray for each other, like I when we moved into a house this one time, the moving van was we live on a mountainside and the hill's really steep. And I was, oh my gosh, the guys are gonna and it was snowy, and I'm like, they're gonna roll down the hill. Oh my gosh. So I'm texting my sisters, please pray for our our movers that they can get up the hill and they'll be safe. And my sisters are like, on it, on it. So it's like I have this automatic, prayer request that goes out, and everybody's like, and you can feel the power of prayer with that.
Mm.
And but back to what I was saying, to Alaska, we moved to Alaska. I got ripped away from this community that I loved of my childhood friends to go to Alaska, the middle of nowhere. And so all we had was each other. That's all
Mm.
we had.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had to get along or not have any friends, I guess. Yeah.
Those came, but not till later, right?
Yeah. Right, right, right. Well, it that's a hard time to move. Middle of high
Right.
school, I think, is like the worst time to move, probably.
Yeah.
But to leave all your friends, because by 14 or nearly 14, you do have these established friendships. If you leave in first or second grade, you have friends, but it's not friends that you've had for years. It's just not the same somehow. And so I imagine that had to be hard. And then you make the promises, right? We'll stay in touch and we'll see each other and all of those kind of things. But
Write
you're in
letters.
Alaska.
Yeah,
Yeah.
write letters. In fact, we moved in the book, I will say, most of it is pretty spot on, but my dad's job was different than it is in the book. He was over a huge project for the state of Alaska to bring agriculture and produce. And because everything was shipped on a barge from Seattle, like fresh dairy milk, cow's milk, things like that, cheese, whatever. And it was really different for me to go to my, friend's house or people in my church or whatnot and have breakfast and they would have powdered milk. I'm like, who drinks powder? Well, that's, you think about it, the Alaska wilderness, there's no dairy farms. There's not very many. There was just very few. So that was his job, was to go up there and clear out 4,000 acres of wilderness, which he did across the bay from Anchorage. And then he literally flew, not kidding. This was on the national news with Tom Brokaw in 1984, 1,000 cows from Hill Air Force Base in Ogden, Utah to Alaska. That's how they got up there. They didn't go up in, cow, like trucks. He flew them in the sky. Cows do fly.
Wow. Did they
So,
fly first class?
right?
They should
It
have.
was a huge jet for the Air Force. So we lived out in the middle of nowhere. And so when we first got out there, there were no telephone poles. There wasn't electricity. We had a big generator that would provide the electricity to the dairy farm. The barn was the length of two football fields. It's still there to this day. It's a very big structure, and it was built for the Alaskan winters, and it was one of a kind. And so, yeah, it was this big, huge generator. So we didn't have per se electricity. We didn't have a telephone, and so we had to use a like a walkie-talkie thing that was the base was at his partner in Anchorage. We lived right across the bay from Anchorage. You could see Anchorage and all the planes flying over, but you had to drive all the way around, which would take 2 hours one way just to get to Anchorage. And to Wasilla, where I ended up going to school, was a 45-minute drive one way every day. So I got used to driving and long distances and listening to lots of 80s music.
Yeah.
So that was hard. It was hard to be in the middle of nowhere. And we did homeschool for the first little while to get established, just to be like, where are we? You know, and so I did homeschool for a part of my freshman year. And that was really hard to get letters from your friends saying, oh, we're going to this dance, or we're going to go see Footloose, and I don't even think it had made it to Alaska yet then, because we always got stuff like several months later. It wasn't like downloads like you can do now. It's just a little backwards, far, far away on Judea's plains, as I say. It's like another country,
Yeah. Yeah. No
like
kidding.
like 15 miles away at the closest point. And, during then it was, the Cold War. And so going to Alaska was like kind of scary. And I remember watching a video in fifth grade of the Alaskan earthquake in the 60s that destroyed a lot of Anchorage and people died. And I'm just like, I will never go there. And then tsunami, and then my dad announces we're moving there. I was not a very nice daughter. I don't think I was a brat. I was like, what? We're going where? And I was a first chair violinist in my orchestra at the time. We could just walk to church. We could walk to the bus stop, all your friends, babysit, all those things. And I was also in a dance team. And so all that was gone. And
Mm.
now it's homeschool, and you have to learn how to teach yourself. It was a correspondence course that the state of Alaska would mail to people who lived out in the bush and
Oh.
far, far away. And they would even have mail drops sometimes, like a plane would fly over and drop stuff in a box. It was what, like, what?
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
beginning of Alaska, from Utah to Alaska.
No kidding. No kidding. It sounds more like being out in the bush in Africa, but cold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And dark, and dark.
And dark. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
when we
Yeah.
moved up there, it was April, May, it was May. And, the sun doesn't, Alaska's very extreme. It's one or the other. There's no in between. It's like, and then the sun's up all night, and you have to get used to like the sun being up all night. And I remember my mom putting tinfoil on the windows, and finally got sick of looking at the tinfoil because I wanted to see outside. So you just acclimate and you get used to those things. But in the winter, it's dark all the time. You go to school in the dark and you come home in the dark. The lights are on, at 2 in the afternoon. Like, it's so dark outside, and you get used to it, but it does get a little depressing. So that's why tanning beds were invented. I do believe, to get your vitamin D. I mean, you don't get it unless you take it. And it's kind of, you just have to keep busy in the winters because they're very long and
Yeah.
very, very cold, and lots of
Yeah.
wild animals.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That part's kind of cool, a little scary because some of those wild animals are a little scary.
Yeah, there were bears, but the first moose, we would have moose. We just got used to the moose. They're actually more dangerous than the bears because they have a temper, and you just have to be really cautious to not make them angry or move funny if you are confronted or you're outside. There was one morning my sister was getting ready for school, and she started yelling, and I run in, and there's a moose, and he was trying to put his head through the window. Like, we didn't have screens. You just opened the window. They're big, big windows. And he was like wanting to like look. No, it was just like,
Oh, geez.
ah! Yeah. And they would just walk by just like it was nothing. Like, what are you doing here? So it's their territory, because we did move clear out into the wilderness. We were the first ones there. My dad essentially was a pioneer to the Point McKenzie project. And so now I went to visit recently, and they have part of the road paved. There's telephone lines. Everybody has cell phones now. It's like, this didn't exist when we were here. It took a couple years to get the power lines out there because more people started moving out into the community. They built a school. And so, yeah, we were the very first ones out there.
Yeah.
It
You
was
were pioneers.
cool.
Yeah. 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 A little bit like Little House on the Prairie, but alone. Yeah.
Yeah, and, it's funny because my mom's like, "Well, you like Laura Ingalls, you like pioneers, you're a pioneer," and I'm like, "But not no." I like the malls. It was beautiful. I'm just not like an outdoorsy person. I love to go hiking, but my brothers are fishermen. My sisters, they love the outdoor stuff, and I'm just like not that. I was in the fashion and retail industry for years. That's why I like to color coordinate, Kim, because
Oh, I
I've been
like
trained.
that. That's right.
I was always cleaning the house. I was, taking care of the kids, cooking. I love to cook. So I think that's where my love of cooking came from because I had nothing else to do but cook for the
Yeah,
family, right?
right, right. So your school is a long drive away, but you
Yes.
finally got to go during your
Yes.
freshman year. You finally got enrolled and got to go to school. It had to be nice to be with other kids. What was the size of the school compared to the size of the school you left behind?
It was probably about the same
Was
because
it?
there was only one high school in Wasilla at the time. Now there's two or three. Um, because at that time, Wasilla, like they had dirt roads still too, even. And a lot of people came in from Big Lake, which was 20 miles away, Houston. The next high school was Palmer, and that was our rival. So a lot of kids traveled in to the high school. Box Elder was a little bit bigger, but Wasilla, I think there was quite a few. There was quite a few. In our graduating class, I think, geez, there was
Oh, wow.
375, something
That's a
like that.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Cool.
pretty big.
Yeah.
So I was the new girl and wearing jelly shoes in the snow. I wasn't gonna give up my fashion because I lived in Alaska. I was not going to convert to Sorrells and big ugly muckalucks or whatever.
Oh my, yeah. A little tough wearing those jellies in snow. I have to say, you would have very cold feet having
And
to do
I don't even remember being cold. Can you believe
that.
that? I don't even remember being cold. And when I did go to school, and my dad, bless his heart, he was just amazing. I don't know how he did everything he did. He managed all these employees, this project. He was also, involved heavily in our church and all the kids. He always spent good quality time with each and every single one of us. He's my hero. I don't know how he did it, but he would drive me to the bus stop. I had to get up at 4:15 every morning to get ready, and then he would have to have me to the bus stop on Canuck Goose Bay Road, that connected to Wasilla at 5:30 every morning, and he would happily drive me, and it was just like a lot of time of just to be with my dad, and I
Mhm.
didn't have my driver's license then, so he was so amazing. I don't know. I sent him a text 2 weeks ago. I was sitting in church. I was like, I just have to thank you for all the sacrifices you made with your time to get me to the bus stop, for all the conversations we got to have. I would tell him everything. He's like my hero, my best friend. So those
Believe it.
times, it being out there in the dark, there was no street lights because the roads were, just barely brand new. We just got to have all these conversations about direction in life. And I would tell him about my boy problems and my girl problems. And I miss my friends in Utah. And he was never, ever critical of the phone bill. Back then, those landlines and those long distance charges were pretty
Oh,
spendy.
yeah, yeah.
There was one time he did say, the phone bill is about $300 more than it needs to be this month. And I know you miss your friends, but can you just call after 8 o'clock when the discount, uh,
Mhm. A
it
lot
costs.
cheaper after 8 o'clock, right?
And I'm like, but then it's 10 o'clock where they live and they're in bed. So that was hard. But they were always so good and generous to let me fly back every like twice a year for the summers and for spring break. And I would be a guest in my own old high school down there
Yeah.
and get to, be with my friends. But they were so supportive. They knew how hard it was for me. They
Oh,
knew.
that's
They knew.
really sweet.
I had
Yeah,
parents.
yeah, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. That is really sweet. So you go to high school. Did they have an orchestra and dance team?
No,
Oh, neither one.
no orchestra. They had a band,
Yeah.
but they didn't have the violin. So I kind of had to hang that up for a little while. I kept that up and the piano, but the dance, I actually ended up teaching dance lessons out where I lived to the girls, the little girls that lived out there because they didn't have anything. More families were moving into the community, and so there was a need for like a community events. It's like, oh, everybody was in the same boat. We have to drive all the way to Wasilla, but we had a van, and so when we drive into Wasilla, everybody would hop in our van. It was a 15 passenger seat van. And everybody, it was just like the party bus. We go
Yeah.
into town, get groceries, and if we're at the mall, do you need something? Do I need to pick something up for you? And everybody was, so helpful. And there's stores out there now, which it blew me away when I drove out there. I'm like, there's a gas station, there's a church, I mean, it's this big community now, but we were in the infancy stages of it all. So it was nice to be into town. And when I would have events or high school, like I did cheerleading for a little while, and then I got um, kicked out because I was skipping class.
Oh,
I know,
wait,
teenage
I
stuff.
know.
I was going to the mall.
I was gonna say you're not skipping class to go home.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's like, you want to learn about biology and algebra when you could go to the mall? Like, go get an orange juice. Well, go back to English class. I loved English. I just didn't have the brain for biology. I'm like, this is wasting my time. I was just a dumb girl. Your brain isn't developed all the way yet when you're a
Right?
teenager.
You're not
So,
thinking
no, I
everything.
learned yeah, and there's
Yeah.
rules and you have to follow the rules. And that was my rebellion little area. It's like I don't want to go to class. That was pretty much the worst thing I ever did. So I didn't
Yeah,
do anything else other than skip class and go to the mall and get Orange Julius. You could have been drinking worse things, right? So
that's right. That's right. I mean, there's an egg in orange Julius and milk, I think. It's healthy for you. It's good for you. So yeah.
so yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. My parents pulled me out of school for a little bit to go back to homeschool for a little while. They're like, we got to learn how to trust you. You need to be where you say you are and where we know you are. And so I was able to get that back. I was so embarrassed. I felt so bad. In fact, I remember being at a, a record store. I can't remember what it was called. It was in a strip mall by the grocery store, by the high school. And I'm standing in this store and I can't remember what I was going to buy, like a Tears for Fears or Dead or Alive. I don't know, something. And I see my dad drive by with his friend. And
Oh,
I'm standing in the store and I'm looking at my dad drive by and I felt sick. I'm like, I am being dishonest. My dad is working so hard and he thinks I'm at school and I'm here at the record shop. Like, I felt so bad. That was the last time I did that because I just saw my dad drive by, like, oh, and I went back to school but it was too late because I was already failing biology and algebra. So they took me off the cheer team.
that's too bad. But you learned a big lesson. Now
I
you are where
did.
you say you are. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then somewhere in high school, you met somebody special.
I did. I met some really special, actually, several people. I was brand new and well, it was our sophomore year and I was still kind of new because, I started and then I stopped and went back. And I remember going in and there was this girl and this guy that I had noticed before at our church youth dances that we would have in Anchorage. And I was like, I know her. I think she's from Eagle River. So I went, hey, I said, hi, because we had a common friend named Colette. And I'm like, are you Colette's friend, Debbie? And she looks at me, she's like, oh, I know you. She's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, we're just registering. We just moved here from Eagle River and we're going to Wasilla now. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so her last name was Short. My last name was Smith. And so the S's, they put us together to share lockers. We
Hmm?
didn't know it. We were talking like, what's your locker number? We were going up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my locker. We're sharing lockers. And we're like, oh my heck, how did that happen? And so we were hanging out a little bit and there was a school dance coming up. Well, I do have to say, one of the reasons I was skipping my class, Kim, I have to be transparent here. There was a guy that worked at Kinney Shoe Store. I don't know if anybody remembers Kinney Shoe
Oh
Store.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. He kind of he kind of liked me. And he was 21. I'm 15.
Mm.
And he was like Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran. He looked like Nick Rhodes, and he was all the glam with like he wore the eyeshadow, the eyeliner, the makeup, and the shoulder pads with the Don Johnson wannabe type guy. And he was like me. And so he would encourage me to skip class and come say, hey, come say hi. I'll buy an orange Julius on my break if you come down. So anyway, one of those times I skipped class, I took Debbie with me, and we were walking back to the school, and she's like, I don't know if he's really good for you. And I'm like, probably not, but he's so fine. He looks like Nick Rhodes. So she's like, you know what? There's a dance coming up. And she's like, Jerry, my boyfriend, he has a friend and he has a really nice car. And he's more our age. And do you want to meet him? And she's like, he's really cute and he's really nice. And she's like, I actually had a crush on him, but then I met his friend Jerry. And I'm like, oh no, I like Jerry. So I was like, okay. And back then you didn't have social media where you could just pull up or Google somebody to see what they look like. I just trusted that she was like, oh, he's cute, and he has a nice car. So I was like, and he's more our age. I'm like, that sounds more acceptable. And so, yeah. So Friday night comes the dance. And since I live so far away, when I would go to dances or games or anything, I would just stay the night with my friends in town. And then my dad would come and pick me up the next day or whenever he could get me. Right. So, yeah, the dance came. And I remember those school dances, those 80s school dances, they were just iconic. Everybody danced. And the DJ was playing, I remember this, I Can't Drive 55 by Sammy Hagar. And in walks, I didn't know Jerry very well, but Debbie went running over to these two guys that had walked in, and they were talking and hugging. And then she and Jerry just kind of took off. And then Brian is standing there, and he reminded me, I'd just seen The Outsiders and at my friend's house on VHS. And I looked at him and he looked like a real boy. And like he reminded me of Matt Dillon. And because he just had jeans on, he had Vans and a t-shirt. He didn't have any glam on. He didn't have makeup. He didn't have a pierced ear or anything. He was just this boy. He was just this guy. And he reminded me of a lot of my guy friends I had left back in Utah. And I don't remember the first conversation. I remember it was kind of awkward, but what connected us immediately was he was the oldest of 7 kids and I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And we both were just like, oh my gosh, I'm always babysitting. Oh my gosh, and we were just talking about our siblings like that. And then Don't You Forget About Me, Simple Minds came on and we went out and danced, and we danced the whole night, the whole entire night. And Jerry had to leave. I don't remember why, but he left. And then Brian had to drive me and Debbie back to her house. We were driving back to
a very nice car, by the way, because he
he
had
did a very nice car back then.
You obviously have very high standards. He had to be good looking, had to have a nice car. There you go. I mean, what else do you need? Yeah. Yeah.
He had his driver's license.
Oh, that's a big thing.
Right? Yeah. It was his driver's license. I hadn't got my permit yet. So, that was freedom. He was a couple years older than me. He was actually a grade above us. So I was a sophomore and he was a junior. Jerry and Brian were juniors. And he drove us to Debbie's house. And then we started to get out of the car and he just says, oh, wait a minute. Do you guys want to go to McDonald's? Like, we didn't want the feeling or the night to end because it was this feeling we had. It was so easy to talk. And it was like, he didn't make me nervous. And it was just like, we've always known each other. Like we had this connection. And so we're like, okay. So we hop back in the car and shut the door and we drive to McDonald's and we go through the drive-through and we realize we hadn't gotten any money. we're like, he's like sifting through the cup holder or the middle thing and we're looking for money and looking at my purse. We didn't have any money. We didn't really have enough money. So Debbie's like, let's go back to my house and I've got some change and we'll come back. So we went back to our house, got the money, went back to the drive-through. So that's our thing now. We always like, remember when we didn't have money to buy ice cream? So yes, and he drove back to Debbie's house and we sat and talked outside and the midnight sun, because it was September. We met in September 1985. Okay. So September is, I don't know, it just started to become our month for some reason from this for moving forward. Right. So anyway, and so we hung out, we lived long distance back then. Like I said, long distance. He lived in Eagle River. I lived at Point McKenzie. And so he would just call and say, hey, are you guys going to be at your church this weekend? Jerry and I can drive over. Jerry wants to come see Debbie. So Brian became the chauffeur. 4 of us. And then they had homecoming in Eagle River. And he's like, do you guys want to come to our homecoming? So we'd go to homecoming, we'd hang out for the day and the evening and just dance. And it was just like innocent fun. It was just kids being kids, driving around aimlessly without an agenda, just listening to music. And but I do have to say, Debbie and Jerry were always in the back seat making out. It was so embarrassing. No.
Yeah. So you had to keep your eyes forward at all
Yes.
times.
So
Yes.
Brian would be like once in a while, slam on the brake. He didn't have seatbelts back then. Slam, like, oh, he's like, come up for air, guys. Come on. That is a quote in the book. Are you guys going to come up for air? Because it was like that. And then we would hang out when we could, but we didn't really talk on the phone a lot. It was long distance, like I said, and I only had 15-minute time limit because of all the other siblings I had that had phone calls. We had one landline we all shared. So are you going to be at the dance? Yeah, I'll be at the dance. And then hopefully they would show up. And if they didn't, it's like, why didn't they show up at the dance? They don't like me. So all these, stories you're telling yourself in your head, and where you don't go to the same school and see each other every day, it's kind of hard to foster, like a relationship or a friendship. So you just had to wait till the next dance. And that was like once a month. And then the high school dances were, a couple times. And we had to get clearance from Dr. J, our principal, to let Brian and Jerry come to the dance through security because we were rivals and there were like people would get beat up and there'd be fights with the guys and stuff. So they were always in the clear to come through because Dr. J got to know them. And it's like, okay, because Jerry was like the quarterback for the Mustangs, Chugiak Mustangs, and Brian was on the swim team. So they were our competitors. And it was interesting because sometimes Brian would come over to our football games and we were playing Chugiak and he would sit on Wasilla's side and then we'd go sit on Chugiak's side. So we would cheer for Jerry because Jerry was always playing. And Brian would, put his Letterman's jacket around me and I'd be wearing Chuyak Mustangs with my Wasilla t-shirt on and people would be like, who is this guy? And I'm like, he's just my friend. He's just my friend. But we really liked each other. We just didn't know how to say it. And the one time that the game was a little boring. So Brian's like, let's go out to the car. So we go to his car and we're talking and he hands me his class ring. I don't think anybody does class. Do they? My kids never.
Do they do that anymore? I don't know if they do. I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like your trophy for graduating, right? So
and if it was too big, did you do the yarn trick?
Yes.
Make it bigger finger. Yes. Yeah.
Wear it on your finger or put it on a chain. Yeah. That was your girl. You were, or someone's, girlfriend. So he hands me his class ring and he says, I don't wear this anymore. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, I'm holding it. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I give it back to him. And then I'm like, is he trying to ask me to be his girlfriend? Like, and he was just kind of like, okay. And now that we're older, we go back and revisit those moments. And he was like, yeah, I was trying to ask you to be my girl. And you basically said no. So I drove away. I was like, I didn't. You have to be, you have to speak directly. But when you're young, how do you express your feelings? And you're scared and you're nervous and stuff. And anyway,
right. And what if you said no? I mean, it would be devastating to him. So yeah, I'm nervous about that.
In his mind, I did. And then after I got home and I wrote in my journal that experience. And then I'm like, he was probably asking me to be his girlfriend. So I called him and I said, come to the next dance in Palmer. Because there was, I don't know if anybody remembers the dance clubs, the teen dance clubs that were in the 80s. And it was just, a place for teens to come and listen to some really cool music. And then they had like the new wavers dancing over here. And then what they called back then, the stoners over here dancing. And then, the pop music right here, Michael Jackson, Madonna. And there was all these diverse, but everybody was under one roof. And we were all doing the same thing, mingling, hanging out, and just enjoying, being teens back then. And I asked him to come to a dance, and there were multiple times where he would come over, and I had more guy friends than I did girlfriends. I do have to say that. Girls are drama. Debbie has been my best friend since I was 15. She's not into the drama. She's just very black and white. She tells me like it is, and I do the same with her. And we love and respect each other. So, but guys are different. They're very black and white, and it's nice to have some guy friends in your corner when you're a teen girl, and they kind of watch out for you. So there was a few times where my guy friends, I would be talking to them at the dance and might have actually danced with a couple because we were friends, and they
Mhm.
were nervous, and they're like, how do I ask that girl over there to dance? Do you know her? And so I was like giving them advice. And Brian would come into the gym and see me dancing with these boys, and he would he would get his feelings hurt and he would drive away and leave. There was twice he left me at the dances. And so guess who had to drive me home? These guys.
Yeah, he kind of set himself up there. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just teenage stupid games, right? Okay. So long story short, her dad ended up losing his job, and they moved to Oklahoma. So they had left the state, and it was devastating. And that changed the dynamics of how we all hung out anymore, because it was Jerry and Brian and then me. So Jerry started dating other girls, and then that made me nervous because I'm like, Brian's going to start dating other girls from his school. So I'm going to start dating guys from Wasilla. And so we had this disconnect for a little while. And then he called me once and he says, if you and your friend Star could meet me at Jumpers, I'm going to bring some friends on Friday. And Jumpers was a dance club in Anchorage. And I was like, okay. So we had to coordinate rides all the way. I had to get from Point McKenzie to Wasilla, someone from Wasilla to drive us to Anchorage. So our friend's mom drove us over there, and we get in the parking lot, and I go to get out, and Brian's standing there with this guy named Clayton. And he was a really nice guy. And he was like all new wave-ish and had a mohawk, combat boots, and this army jacket. And I was like, this is cool. He didn't have makeup on, but
Yeah.
this is cool. So he introduces me, and then he and Star walk off into the dance club. And I'm like, okay. So I get inside, and he and Star are dancing to You Spin Me Round like a record. And I'm like, he's dancing with her, and she knows I like him. And I'm like, what is going on? So that whole evening was like him and Star, and then Clayton. And Brian's car was broke down. And so we had to drop them off in Eagle River on our way back to Wasilla. And we're in the car with our friend's mom driving, and our friend is in the front seat. So there's Brian and Star, me and Clayton in the back. And I can feel Clayton getting really close, like he's going to kiss me. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. And I turn my head, and there's Brian and Star kissing.
Oh, oh,
I was
Diane.
I don't know where to put my eyes right now or where to
Oh,
look. I'm like, if I turn, he's going to kiss me. I don't want him to kiss me. He's a nice guy, but I don't like him like that. And then I'm looking over here, and I'm just like, I cannot believe she is kissing him. I'm like, that was my friend. Like, she just broke girl code, right? So
mm,
that was my first time I had something like that happen. And then we dropped them off, and then Brian says to Star, I'll call you. And
oh,
then Clay's like, I'll call you, Jennie. I'm like, and then they get out, and Star turns around to me, and she's like, oh, he's a good kisser.
oh. And you wanted to slap her. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
was stunned. I was like, oh, and I had to spend the night at her house that night.
Oh,
And the
oh,
whole time she's talking about Brian this and Brian that and Brian this and Brian that. I was like, spring break was coming up, and I just begged and pleaded my parents, can you just send me to Utah to see my friends? I just need to get out of here. And so I did. And I flew down there. In fact, Clayton called me a couple days later, and he's like, hey, Brian and Star want to go to the movies in Eagle River on Friday. Do you want to go with me? And I was like, no. I feel so bad for being so mean to him now. I'm like, no, I'm going to Utah. And I hung the phone up. I
oh,
never heard from him again. But since then, now as adults, we've reconnected, and he understands what happened. So anyway, he's good now. But and then I got back from Utah a couple weeks later, and Star calls me, and she's like, well, Brian's not calling me. He won't call me back. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And yeah, because I had this feeling inside that he was just doing that to upset me, to get
mm,
back at me, these games. So
mm.
then I was going to get him back at the next dance. And there was a guy from Fairbanks that came down, and he kissed me in front of Brian. So we did this for about a year, Kim. It was so dumb because it was like, you're just plotting and planning the next dance. Well, I'm going to do this, and you did this. And it was so dumb because he ended up graduating in 1987, and he was getting ready to move to California. And it was September 1987. And we had talked, we would see each other here and there, right through the same friends and through Jerry, of course, Jerry. And Jerry would call me every once in a while, like, have you heard from Debbie? How's Debbie doing? And I'm like, how's Brian? And he's like, oh, he really, really likes you. He's just a weirdo. And he's like, I know you like him too. He's like, you should come to graduation. I'm like, not unless he invites me. I'm not coming. I'm not showing up unless he invites me. He has to invite me. That's all he has to do. And I would be there, but he never did. So, the last time we saw each other after all this stupid stuff, we were at a dance, and I was actually one of the older chaperones at the dance. It was our church, and they'd asked me to help chaperone. And somebody comes and taps me on the shoulder. I turn around, it's Brian. I'm like, hi. And the first thing I say that comes out of my mouth is, Star's not here. She's not with me. And he was like, no, he's like, I was just wanting to know if you wanted to dance with me. I was like, oh, okay. I was forgiven and forgotten. And we're out there dancing, and he's telling me he's getting ready to go to California. And his parents are moving from Eagle River to Anchorage and just catching up. And I was telling him about my life. I'm getting ready to go to Utah to graduate. And my parents had promised me that I could go back and graduate with my childhood friends if I could go to class and be where I was supposed to be, and if they could trust me. So there were conditions. And I was like, amen. I will do anything you ask. I will clean the toilet. I will weed. I will work out in the barn. I will milk cows. I will do whatever. Just let me go back with my friends. So I did. And I was letting him know, well, I'm leaving and you're leaving. And I was like, oh, I wonder if we'll ever see each other again. And this is a really crazy thing because it gives me goosebumps to this day. As we were leaving the dance and I was going towards my card with my friends, and he turned his back and was like, see ya, I'll let you know. Because I was like, let me know when you're leaving. And he says, I'll call you and let you know. I said, okay. And I'll let you know when I'm leaving. And so we both walk away, and I turn around, and this thought went through my mind. I'm not going to see him for a long time. And a couple years, I was thinking, had no idea it was going to be 3 decades. I just watched him walk away, and I remember that to this day. I'd forgotten that for a long time until later. There was a lot of memories that I didn't remember until they all came rushing back when we reconnected years later. So that was the last time we saw each other, September 1987, 2 years after we had met. And we started writing letters back and forth. I would say he had some stuff going on with his family. I did not know it at the time. I know now. His mom went through a lot of issues with his dad, and I did not know. And Jerry, he did say to me, he gave me Brian's address in California, in San Jose. And he's like, when you write to Brian, don't say anything about his family. Don't ask him. Just say focused on you and how he's doing and how he likes California and all these things. So I was like, okay, I didn't ask questions. And so we reconnected writing letters. Like we would write letters 3 times a month. Like I would write a letter off to him and I would get one in the mail. Like 2 days later, we would send cassette tapes, talk tapes back and forth, and music. We would send music. We'd share music back and forth, mixtapes, and pictures. We would send pictures through the mail of each other. And he was like, I want to come see you in Utah, because I did. I ended up moving back to Utah. I'm going to college. I graduated, went to college in Salt Lake and with my friends. And he was like, I want to come see you eventually when I can. And remember, back in those days, again, it was long distance phone calls and they were expensive. So we wrote back and forth. We didn't talk on the phone ever. I talked to Jerry once in a while. Jerry had gotten married, not to Debbie. And so Debbie and I had been in touch a little bit, but we hadn't really, you know, you move away. Back in those days, when you move away, you have different lives, you're in different states, you have separate friends, and sometimes you just don't stay connected because life takes over. And that's kind of what happened with she and I for a little bit, but we did reconnect eventually. And she had married someone else. And anyway, the longest story short of it is Brian called me out of the clear blue. It was December 1989. And he was like, I'm in Oregon visiting my parents. I was like, oh, Oregon? He's like, yeah, they went from Eagle River to Anchorage to Oregon. And I was like, oh, and Jerry did mention to me that his parents were going to move to the States, but they were moving to Nevada. They were going to go to Vegas because his grandparents lived there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you were in Oregon. Oh my goodness. And he's like, but I'm going to be in Salt Lake Next week, I'm shopping songs at a recording studio and I want to see you. And I was like, oh, I want to see you too. And we have been writing, right? So I gave him the last letter we had written before he left California, went back to Oregon. He asked me for my phone number. I'm like, he's not going to call me. Well, he did. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited. I was jumping up and down. And so I was in finals, getting ready to go back to Alaska for Christmas break. And he called me one night, a week later, he called me and he says, well, I'm here. I'm staying with family. I'm in the Salt Lake area and I have this meeting in the morning. I don't know how long it's going to go, but I'll call you when I'm done and tell you where to meet me. And he was downtown. And I'm like, oh, well, I work downtown. I work at the mall and I live downtown. It was like 3 blocks away. So I was like, perfect. I'm so excited. And the last thing he said was like, I'm so excited to see you. And I said, I'm excited to see you too. And we hung the phone up. And the next morning, I didn't get a call. And I was like, this is really strange. So I went to call my mom and the phone was dead and there was no dial tone. I'm like, what is wrong with the phone? And they were doing construction out on First Avenue. And I'm like, did they hit the phone line? Oh my gosh. So I go running over to my neighbors. I'm like, is your phone working? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, what? Your phone's working? Plot twist. Right. And I'm like, okay. So back in those days, you can call the operator and you give them your phone numbers. Like, what? My phone's not working. It's dead. And she was like, the operator was like, yeah, she was so snarky. She was like, due to non-payment, there hasn't been one payment made on this phone bill since September. We've been roommates since September. There were 6 girls, and one of us had to have utilities in her name. And so my roommate Lisa had the phone in her name when we were writing personal checks to her every month instead of US West Communications. So we're writing a personal check. And then it all started making sense because she was coming home from the mall where we all worked out for $5 an hour with like bomber jackets and stuff, like shopping bags. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So we go marching right back over to our apartment. She's not home. And we're like, oh my heck. So this is her problem now, right? Because it's her credit, not ours. So I was like, oh my gosh, Brian's going to think I did this on purpose. This is how you used to ghost people way back then. We didn't have our phone numbers associated with apps. The only person that had our phone number was Blockbuster, right? So it's like, you can easily change your phone number back then. So I'm like, he's going to think that I did this on purpose. He's finally here to see me. And it's like I'm dancing or talking to other guys. Kind of, I just knew how he thought. And I was like, no, 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 no. So I run downtown to the area I thought he was at. And it was almost noon because it was pretty late in the morning. And I'm like, is this going to be too late? I had to work that later that afternoon. So, and I remember going past the Cathedral of the Madeleine that's on South Temple and the bells were chiming the noon hour, thinking I'm too late. He's going to be gone. And it started raining. And I get down there and I'm looking at the building that I thought he was going to be at, and it was close to the mall. And I was in the breezeway because it was raining, and I had a leather skirt on. I didn't want it to get ruined, and I was just like flustered. Like, what? It's so hard. I never found him. I was like, has he changed that much in 2 years? I wouldn't recognize him, but I'm like, I got pictures of him. I know what he looks like. And I know what it feels like to be around him. And I couldn't find him. I was searching. It was literally like a movie scene. And I went to work and I got to work and I went through the white pages to look at any Drollingers in Salt Lake Valley. Because remember, he said he's staying with family. And I'm like, okay, there were no Drollingers in the valley, Salt Lake Valley. I'm like, and I don't know what part of Oregon his parents moved to. He didn't tell me. And you couldn't find someone's number in another state unless you had the white pages. So I didn't know what to do. And I called my mom and told her, and she's like, well, he has your address. He's been writing to you with that address. Surely, I remember this, surely he'll write and ask what happened. And I'm like, I don't know if he's going to. So then I had to go to Alaska the next day. I get to Alaska and I want to call my roommates and ask them if I have a letter from Brian. Of course, we don't have a phone, so I can't call them. And then the volcano erupted. The volcano erupted in Alaska and shut everything down for a week. So I couldn't get down to Utah till like mid-January. I didn't start my classes on time. I called the administrative office to tell them that my flight was delayed because the airport shut down because a volcano erupted. And I remember the lady saying, well, now I've heard everything. I'm like, it's on the news. I'll bring the paper and show you. So I get to Salt Lake. Finally get back. There's no mail from Brian, nothing. And I'm like, well, I guess that was it. I guess God or Heavenly Father's telling us that, we're not supposed to be together. And I had a couple of other guys pursuing me and another guy that was pursuing me. And that wasn't a good thing. It was not a good thing. And at the time, I did not have a lot of self esteem or a lot of worth. I had a situation that happened to me with one of these guys that I thought it was my fault, but it wasn't. And because I didn't listen to the Holy Spirit, like, don't go get in the car with him. Oh, no, he's nice. I trust him. No. So, I had a situation that I got myself into, and somebody had told me that no nice boy would want me now. And I
Oh,
believe that.
oh,
And I didn't ask for help. I thought it was my fault because the narcissistic person that, took advantage of me, deflected upon me and made me feel like it was my fault. And I felt like, I was trying to get a warrant, I was being warned and I didn't listen. And so I deserved it. That was my dark, dark time in my life. And so when Brian didn't show up, I took that as you're not worthy,
mm,
so don't pursue it. Let him go. The universe is in charge. God will direct you. And so I ended up marrying this person. And it's funny because Brian and I got
that
married.
person, that,
Yeah, I
oh,
did.
wow, wow.
I did. I did. But what's interesting to note is Brian got married that same year that I got married. We both got married the same year.
Yeah.
Different people, right? And I was in it for the long haul. And nobody in my family has ever been divorced. That's not a word you say. You commit, it's for life. And I had two beautiful children out of that relationship, and they're my best buddies, to this day. And I have no regrets. The only thing that I do regret is the low self esteem that I had about myself. And I think I had to go through these dark moments to become who I am now.
Mm,
Um, there's a big difference. And so, you get married, you have your kids. Debbie and I reconnect. She got married. She had two kids, and she was in Seattle, and I'm in Utah. And then I go to Tennessee. And while I was in Tennessee, things didn't kind of go very well. And I kind of put up with a lot that stuff that I shouldn't have had to put up with, but I did. But like I said, it makes me stronger.
mm.
And I have a story to tell. So anyway, yeah. So that marriage ended up in divorce, and it wasn't because I didn't try or I didn't want to. I promised my daughter when she was in fifth grade, she goes to school, she comes home and she says, Mommy, what's divorce? I'm like, oh, she'd never heard that word. And she's like, my friend is divorced, that his mommy and daddy don't live together. I'm like, that is so sad. I'm like, that's not going to happen. That won't ever happen. To this day, she says to me, what you should have said. Yeah, she's a mental health therapist now.
Yeah, nice.
She's so, but anyway, so that was really devastating and hard. And
So hard.
it just going through that with your kids, and actually my kids were really proud of me because when I called my daughter and told her that I was going to have to leave the marriage, she was like, I was wondering when you were going to tell me this, Mom. She's like, I
Mm,
am so proud of you. I'm like, really? She's like, Mom, yes. So that was going on in my life at the time, this turmoil. And Debbie, about 10 years before, she had called me with some major issues with her husband that was like, oh, wow. And she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, go to therapy, do everything you can. And there was nothing she could do. So she ended up being a single girl, and I'm a single girl. Later, not yet. Um,
mm,
and I was still married and sticking through. But she called me one day and she says, Jennie, she was like, Jerry's sister called me and was wondering that if I would talk to him. He's going through a really hard time. His wife kicked him out of the house. He's living in a tent in Alaska.
mm.
And when she lets him back in, he can live under the stairs with the kids. I'm like, what? And she's like, should I call him? Should I talk to him? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, yeah, go ahead. Go, just talk to him. But first of all, I thought Jerry had died. That's a whole nother story. My dad was confused. There was three brothers from the Eagle River area that were tied to each other. They were mountain climbing, and one slipped and fell, and they all fell, and they were all killed. And
Oh,
while yeah, it was tragic. So
yeah.
you know, three families lost their dads, and he thought it was the Fulmers, but it was their cousin. So when Debbie first initially said Jerry's sister called and wants to know if would talk to him, I'm like, he's alive? Like what? And
Yeah.
so I thought he was dead for a long time. So that was before internet time. So anyway, I was like, yeah. And then long story short, she and Jerry reconnected. She actually moved to Utah. He was in Alaska, and they talked on the phone quite a bit. And later down the road, they saw each other. They got married. They
Mhm.
got married. And I was like, this is crazy. Did Debbie and Jerry making out in the back of the car? And then I did tell Debbie, I said, if he is still friends with Brian Drollinger, you make sure he never says anything about me. I don't want Brian to know anything about my life. When Brian didn't write me, I envisioned him just driving off the cliff and dying. Like he's gone. Done. I made my choices. I made my bed and I have to lay in it, and make the best of it. So that was my mindset. I never thought about him. In fact, nothing. There was nothing. There would be a song that would come on once in a while on the radio, like Mr. Broken Wings, Talk to Me by Stevie Nicks, I Can't Drive 55, Sammy Hagar, and Simple Minds, and Madonna Crazy for You. And I would just, just not listen to it because all that would come back. And, Back to the Future, we watched that together. And just those 80s things I would just have to just put out of my mind. And it hurt. And I didn't know why it hurt. It like in my stomach, it was just like made me so sad. And then I don't know why. I don't know why. So I told Debbie, don't ever speak about me to him. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing. She's like, oh, Jennie, he's so nice. He's such a nice guy. I'm like, I don't care. She's like, you guys just need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I don't want to talk to him. No. And so I was very adamant about that. And she was very respectful and never brought him up until I oh, wow. Yeah, until, she texted me one day. Well, before she texted me, actually, I had met her and Jerry for lunch. They had a home in Utah at the time. They would fly from Alaska to Utah and go back and forth. And I happened to be in Utah visiting family. And she was like, hey, come over here and meet us for lunch. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be so fun to see you again. So it was me, her, and Jerry. If it was just Debbie and I, Brian wouldn't have even come up. But Jerry, for 3 hours, just was going on and on about Brian, how worried he was about him. His wife had left him with 7 kids and she didn't want to be married. And he was in the depths of despair. And Jerry's like, see, he's calling me right now. And I'm like, don't tell him I'm here. I don't want nothing to do with this. No, no, no. And I was kind of like inside going, oh, good. I'm glad he's miserable. Is it that mean? That was like how like hurt I guess I was. I didn't know. And I'm just like, okay. And Jerry was like, I'm not going to talk to him right now. And I was just kind of kicking Debbie under the table, like, let's go to the bathroom. So we go to the bathroom and I'm like, can we just not talk about Brian anymore? I want to have a good day. I'm like, I have stuff going on in my life. I can't even talk to you because I was scared to tell her what was happening in my life because I was afraid Jerry would tell Brian. Remember Jennie? And this is what I just didn't want to. I was just silent. I was just no. So a week after that meeting that we had, she texted me and she was like, would it be okay if Jerry gives Brian Drollinger your phone number? He really needs some legal advice. I lived in southeastern Idaho at the time, and apparently he was in Boise and opposite ends of the state. And she's like, he really needs some guidance here. He's just going nuts. Can you just talk to him like an old friend? And I was like, I don't know. So I call my daughter, who's a mental health therapist. I'm like, Mercedes, what should I do? She's like, okay, mom, just be black and white. Like he's a client. You don't know him. You don't know who he is. You don't know his voice. You don't know him at all. So just like he's a client. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I text her back and I said, sure. I was continually texting her about other things. And all of a sudden on the screen, Brian Drollinger comes across my phone. And I just was like, that was the call I've been waiting for in 1989. And now you're calling me for help. I dropped the phone and I was like, oh my heck, he must be desperate because like I hadn't even texted her 5 minutes before, sure, and he's already calling me. And it was just, and so I pick up the phone and I didn't answer it. And I just was like, my heart's pounding. In fact, I didn't go to Debbie and Jerry's like wedding or their reception or their celebration because I was worried that he was going to be there. And I did not want to see him. I didn't have nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And I had my life. I have my kids. I have my nieces and my nephews. I have my career. I'm good. I don't need that. And so very stubborn about it. And so he texted me, hey, Jennie, it's been a long time. And he sent me a picture of him and his grandkids.
Oh.
I'm like, this is how old we are. The last time we saw each other, I was 17, he was 19. And now he's like, we're this grandparent age, right? That's a lot of decades. That's a lot of Christmases. That's a lot of birthdays to miss. And it's like, wow. So I texted him back. I said, I'm really busy right now, but I can call you tomorrow because I wanted to get my mind together. And so I was like, why is this throwing me for a loop? This shouldn't be this. It shouldn't affect me like this. So I had to pray about it. I talked to my other friend about it and I'm just like, ah. And so anyway, I called him the next evening and I was like, hey, so what's going on? Tell me this, this, and this. And in the conversation, I said to him, I said, I would advise you to try to stay with your wife, do everything you can to stay married because you've got 7 kids and assets, and divorce will, because I worked in a law office that dealt with a lot of divorce and despair, and I'm like, divorce will turn your insides out. It's not worth it. And you've been married for over 30 years. Just try to hold it together. And he's like, she doesn't want anything to do with me. It's over. And I felt so bad for him. I was actually, oh, I guess I'm really sorry I cursed you all these years because he was not well. I was like, oh, I can see what Jerry's talking about. And Jerry's like this Alaskan bushman who hunts for moose and he has wolves and he's bear hunting. And he was getting really like teary-eyed over concerned about Brian's mental health. And I was like, okay. And so I just kind of guided him a little bit. And I said, when I get to work tomorrow, this was a Sunday night. When I get to work tomorrow, I'll talk to my attorneys and we'll find you an attorney over in Ada County because this is out of jurisdiction and my office can't help you, but we can find you somebody and we'll text you tomorrow. And he said, okay. And then he says, Jennie, wait a second, wait a second. He's like, why didn't we get together? What happened? Like, why didn't we see each other? And I was like, you know what? Let's have that conversation after we get your attorney and we'll talk about it, later. But for right now, let's just focus on getting you an attorney. He's like, oh, okay. And then he left. We hung up and I was like, phew. 10 minutes later, he called me back. He says, no, I want to know what happened. I was like, okay. My roommate didn't pay a phone bill. And so I started telling him the story and I tried to find you. And he was like, stop, wait a minute. You still liked me. And I said, yes, I tried to find you. I went to the building you said you were going to be at in the recording studio, but you couldn't get in without a passcode. You had to have a key to get in. There was security there. And I stood outside and waited as long as I could. And it started raining and then I had to go to work. He was like, no way. I'm like, yeah. He goes, who do I strangle? And I told him who. He's like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm not. And so he's like, oh, okay. So we'll just deal with that. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So we did. I said, I'll text you tomorrow. I'll text you an attorney. He's like, okay, all right. He was stunned. Like he told himself a story that I thought he was going to tell. And so I was like, well, timing must be off or whatever. But my plan was, Kim, to get him his attorney and send him on his way. I was in the depth of despair, having my own personal issues. And I didn't want it to come to I didn't want him to know about what I was dealing with. It was none of his business. I was none of his business. That's what I told Debbie. I am none of his business. So, yeah. So we got him his attorney and we would be in touch here and there. And then he randomly called me a couple weeks later and he's like, I have a booth at the Southeastern Idaho State Fair. I've had it there for 15 years. He's a health and wellness coach. And my son wants to take over and I'm going to be there training my son. You should come and say hi. And I was like, He's like, I want you to meet my son and daughter-in-law. And I was like, well, then I'm going to bring my son and daughter-in-law. I'm not going in there alone. Are you serious? So, a couple days before that, I had an afternoon off at work. We had a really stressful situation going on with some clients at my job, and I was able to take the afternoon off. And I went and had this little photo shoot for me. I was turning 50, and I had booked it way in advance. And it was across the street from where I worked, and it was just a fun photo shoot just for me. And right after the photo shoot, I had hair and makeup and all this stuff, and he had texted me like 10 times. I'm passing through. I'm in the area. Are you around? I could see you now. And I'm like, this isn't a good time for me. And he's like, I'm like, I'm in the middle of a photo shoot. I have a ton of makeup on. I need to go home. And he was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's all cool. I have about 30 minutes. My parents are here. They have my girls. And he had at the time a 8-year-old and a 10-year-old at the time. They were the caboose.
Mhm.
And he's like, I want to see you. I was like, well, I guess I could for a second, but I don't look like I normally do. So I say, okay. And I drive over there and we say hi for a second. It was awkward. It was weird. And he's looking at me like, I'm like, I told you, this is not how I normally look. And anyway, there's a scene like that in the book that we kind of, Trish is like, we got to put that in. Cause that was the first time we saw each other since 1987. And are you kidding? So that was like kind of weird, right? And I drove away and I went back home. It was only for like 25 minutes or so. We talked about his case and the, just technical, it was just legal stuff. It wasn't really like, how are you really doing? It wasn't anything like that. So I drove away. And then he's like, come to the fair. I want to see you. And so that's when I called my son and I said, there's this guy. And he was like, oh, I know who you're talking about. I'm like, how do you know who I'm talking about? He goes, I remember the story you told me about the disconnected phone. That's that guy. I'm like, yeah. And what's interesting is I had my seminary scriptures. I took Bible study classes, scripture classes when I was a youth, and I would just like doodle in them while the instructor's speaking, like you do. And I wrote in the front of it, I love Brian Drollinger, October 13th, 1985. And my daughter one day, she was like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, it's this guy. And so my kids kind of knew the name. And then I actually saved a couple of the pictures that he had sent me from his mission that were in my scriptures. And when he was doing a service, and they were like, what? They're like, who is that? I'm like, that's the guy. Well, anyway, I told my son, this is that guy. And I haven't seen him since Alaska. And so he's like, yeah, we'll come with you. Well, I'm leaving to go to the fair to see Brian and his kids. And my son calls me and says, we can't go. Maddie, his wife, had something else he didn't know about. So we've got you on locator, Mom. I was like, okay. And if you need me, just call me. So we're watching. So the tables have kind of turned, right?
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, it happens.
So I
Yeah.
got to the fair and he told me where he was at and I found him and he was sitting in this chair. And I turned the corner and when I saw him, he looked up at me and I looked down at him. And I didn't even see the salt and pepper, the gray. I didn't see any of the aging. I just saw his eyes and we locked eyes. And I was like, it's you.
Mhm.
It's you. It's you. It's always been you. And that's why everything, like 30 years of misunderstandings, everything just went away. It was like this thing, our souls were connecting. It was like God was just bringing us together. And it wasn't like this attraction thing, it was a spiritual bond that I have never felt. It's like when you hold your baby for the first time.
Mhm.
It's that connection, that spiritual connection. It's a gift. And we just sat there and we looked at each other like we were speechless. And his son says, so you must be Jennie. Like, because we weren't, it was just like, I was just so caught off guard. It was so like, it was real. It was so real. I can't even, I've never felt that way. And so we just were like, hi, hi. And then I realized it was his birthday. I realized that. So this was September 9th. This was September. Okay. Last time we saw each other, September 87. This was September 2021.
Mhm.
And I remembered it was his birthday. So I got him a little book about gratitude. And I just was like, just write 3 things you're grateful for every day, Brian, to get you through this. Just 3 things. You'll get through it. God's going to take care of you, whatever. So we kept in touch after that. We would text, and I was going on a sabbatical to be alone by myself in the Arizona desert. I was born in Arizona, and Sedona is my vibe to go just hike and be in the clean air in the creeks and it's just I love Arizona. I love the desert. It speaks to me. So you can see falling stars at night, and it's just the ambience of the desert. He's a beach person. I'm a desert girl. So I go to Arizona, and what happens? Debbie called me and she's like, Jennie, she's like, I wouldn't be surprised if Brian wanted to come see you. He's in Michigan right now. And he just pops in and flies around and just pops in and he'll probably come see you. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not going to do that. And she goes, I wouldn't be surprised. But before this, let me back up. The night we saw each other at the fair when I was driving back home to Pocatello, there was like this shooting star that went across the sky. And then what comes on my soundtrack is Stevie Nicks' Talk to Me.
Mm.
And Talk to Me, that song came out when we had first met and we were having, I don't know, misunderstandings back and forth. And I wrote him a card because Debbie always said, she goes, he'll understand, just write him a card and explain to him. So I kind of explained whatever was going on at the time. And it was like, you can talk to me anytime. And I wrote the lyrics to Stevie Nicks in
Mm.
this card I sent to him in 1985, or was it 86 by then? And so that song came on my playlist, and there's the star. And I'm like, what? And then Debbie calls me and she's like laughing. She's like, Jennie, she's like, Jerry is on the phone with Brian right now. And Brian is so freaked out that he just saw you. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of freaked out too. And she's like, what is going on, you guys? And she's like, Brian's trying to describe these feelings. And he's like, I just saw Jennie and I don't know how I feel, but there's something really weird. And I hope it's not the devil. And I don't know what it means. And I'm like telling Debbie, I'm feeling the same way. He's not all the way divorced yet. And I just saw him and I'm like crying. And there's like Stevie Nicks. And she's like, what? I'm like, just, you don't understand. And I'm trying to, and she's just laughing. She's like, I can hear Brian talking to Jerry right now in the other room on speakerphone. And you're telling me the same stuff Brian's telling Jerry. It was just like this weird connection. So when she called me when I was in Sedona, I was in Arizona, she's like, I wouldn't be surprised. So a couple days later, I got a text from him. He's like, hey, I can go to, if I can fly into Flagstaff if you want to come pick me up. And I'm like, well, I gave him a limit. I always gave him limitations. Like when I was at the fair, I was there for 45 minutes. When I saw him, that first time just driving by, I was there for 20 minutes. I'm like, well, you can go on a hike with me, but that's it. So I was trying to figure out myself too. And I didn't need all of this, noise. Like, what is happening? I needed to like pray and I needed to be in my environment away from what I was dealing with so I could figure out the direction of my life. Because when you're in your 50s and you got to start over again, it's like you don't have a lot of time. It's like, okay, every decision I make is crucial to my future and my children and my future grandchildren. Okay. So I want to do things the right way. And so I was searching, soul searching. And when he said, I'll come hike with you, I was like, well, you can go on one hike with me for a couple hours. And so I go to Flagstaff, pick him up, and we're out there hiking in the desert. It's 100 degrees and he hates it. He hates heat. I love heat. We're opposites. He was born in Alaska. I'm born in Arizona. So there you go. And we found some shade and we went and sat down. And he says, Jennie, I got to tell you, when I first saw you and you had all that makeup on, you were freaking me out because you reminded me of this horrible experience I had back in high school with this girl. And the lights came on and I saw this makeup she had on. It freaked me out. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know that experience you had. And I said her name and he was like, how do you know her? I'm like, you called me and asked me to bring her to the dance. And then I know you went on another date with her. And he was like, I did that to you. He couldn't even remember. And I was like, yeah. So he's like, and like Clayton, he's like, oh my gosh, you know Clayton? How do you know Clayton? I'm like, you introduced us. So he totally forgot all this. And so it was like a come to Jesus moment for both of us. Like he's like, I did that to you. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that was really mean. I'm like, yeah, you were really mean. So when you drove away in Salt Lake and didn't even like fight for me or say, why couldn't I call you? He's like, well, I thought you were just going in another direction. So we were able to clear up all those misunderstandings, clear back from the 80s, like everything. We had that discussion right there in the shade in the Arizona desert. He was dying of heat, but he didn't care because we were just like the whole time it was like all these missed opportunities. We were almost there, like the class ring. Like, why didn't you just say, will you be my girlfriend? And I would have said yes. And maybe none of all this would have happened. Who knows? I don't know. But how do you know how to say what you're feeling when you don't even know what you're feeling? But that night when I saw him at the fair, when he was sitting in that chair, the memory came back to my mind of when I saw him for the very last time. And I thought, I'm not going to see you for a long time. That snapped right back into, it was just like a movie. And I was like, this is what that meant. This is what that meant. I think we had to go separate ways and we actually had parallel lives and we didn't even know it with this relationships we were in completely. I just can't even believe it. Just to the point where my husband at the time would put pillows in the middle of the bed. Like, don't come near me. Don't touch me. He traveled a lot and we would come home for 1 week out of the month and he was off with friends and off doing other things. And there was infidelity and I put up with it. because I thought that I couldn't ever have anything better. And so I put up that I put up with that for 10 years.
Mm.
And so I would drive to work thinking, okay, I am a very spiritual person. And I'm like, I know Heavenly Father's going to take care of me. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I know that this is weird right now, but he's preparing something better. I don't know what it is. And then do you know what song would come on? Crazy for You by Madonna or Tears for Fears. I'm like, no, he's, it was just weird how things started happening right before we actually reconnected and were able to get all our misunderstandings resolved. So we just hugged each other as friends. We were like old friends. There wasn't like this romantic, like, oh, whatever, hubba hubba type stuff. It wasn't that. It was spiritual and it was so divine. I would call my mom and dad, and there was another situation that happened when I was 17. I was at Palmer, the church there, and there was like a patriarch or a evangelical leader that I was getting ready to leave to go to Utah, and he pulled me aside and he said, and he was really good friends with my dad. And he told me, he said, Jennie, I have to tell you that when you meet the person that you are supposed to spend your life with, you will know. When the timing is right, you will know. And I forgot all about that. And then that night I was driving back to Pocatello from seeing Brian at the fair. I called my mom and dad because my mom and dad were standing right there when he told me that. And he put his hands on my shoulder and he kind of winked at me. And he said, you might have already met him. He was just like, I'm like, oh, okay. Where's this coming from? I don't, he's like, okay, whatever. Didn't think about it until I saw Brian that night. I called my mom. I said, do you remember what Brother Grover said before I left for Utah, that when the timing is right, I would know? And he winked at me. She's like, yes, I remember that. And he also said some other things to your dad and I after you walked away. This because we were standing on the sidewalk, and I walked towards the car, and they kept talking because they were friends. And I was like, whatever. And I'm like, I think it's happening. And she's like, what? Anyway, it was just very interesting how it's like the only person that could have known any of this was God. Nobody knew my heart. Nobody knew Brian's heart and what he was suffering. Nobody, not no, Jerry and Debbie kind of knew what was going on with Pam, but they didn't know the connection that we were going to end up having eventually. And so I just think divine timing. When I call my mom, this is so weird. This is happening. This is so weird. And she was like, no, it's divine.
Mm.
Don't say weird, divine. And then there was another little situation like 9 months, 9 months before Ryan and I connected. I knew that my marriage was going to be ending and I was downsizing. I was putting Christmas decorations away. And there was my old memory box, and it had a picture of Brian and I dancing that my parents had taken of us at a dance. And I was like, why do I have this? I tossed it in the bin, and I tossed some other Alaska stuff in the bin that had his name on it. I'm like, I don't even know what I have this for. And then my journal, I was going through my journal, and a 14, 15-year-old girl, like John Taylor is fine. I love Duran Duran, or, I love Michael Jackson, whatever. I'm like, oh, this is so dumb. So it's a 3-ring binder. I threw it in the bin with the picture of Brian and I. And a couple hours later, I go out to throw something else away, and I see a calendar poking out that says 87, 88 was my senior calendar. And I was like, oh, I should save that because that has, documentation of games and just concerts and fun things that you did. So I'm going to save that. So I grabbed it and threw it in the other box. Didn't look at it for probably a year. So after Brian and I reconnect, we're talking and reminiscing, and Debbie and Jerry are in our lives, and we saw each other, of the 4 of us, for the first time since 1986. The 4 of us were together. It was in October 2021. We all got together and went to dinner, met them in Utah, and it was so weird. It was like, what? I'm like, I feel like we should have our parents' permission to be here. It's like, because we would like sometimes sneak out or meet at the mall or skip a class to meet up or something. And this is all legal now. It's like legit. We don't have to ask our parents for permission. Well, Jerry's he's like, well, I'm an orphan now. My parents are gone, So it's kind of like a lot of, we've lived our lives, the whole entire lives to reconnect. And so anyway, it was just all this divine stuff. But the calendar I was going through after I moved into my little bungalow apartment, which I did, it's in the book. And I was going through some papers and I saw that calendar and I pulled it out, and there was like these sheets of paper, lined paper that fell out with writing on it that were from my journal. And I was like, I threw that away. I'm looking at the words, and it was like Brian Drollinger, Jerry Fulmer, Debbie Short, and 1986. And it was the story of how I met Brian at the dance all the way until 1988. Those pages somehow stuck inside the calendar of the journal I threw away. And those were the only papers that were saved.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was like, I called
Yeah.
Brian. It was about the ring. I think he was trying to, it was just all the things, Star,
Yeah.
the dance club, Clayton, all the things that we did back and forth to each other, and Stevie Nicks and all the things. And I called him. I'm like, you are not gonna believe what I have. And it's so divine that those papers, that's what got saved. Had I
Mhm.
known that those writings were in there, I would have tossed them with the picture. But we say those were saved so we could write the book. Like
Yeah.
there were
Yeah.
things
Oh my
that
gosh, that's so cool.
it was
Yeah.
like that all the time kept
I
happening.
love it. I love it. I love that you guys got back together. I love that you were America's favorite couple, which that was such a cool thing. And that you're blended your families and everything is beautiful. So this book is based on that story.
Yep.
And it's so good. I highly recommend you buy it, everybody. You can read the rest of the story in here. We'll leave that for you. Jennie, thank you so much for telling your story, for sharing everything.
You
Uh,
are so welcome.
Amazing. I love it all. I just love it. So buy the book. It's on Amazon. You can get it. You can send it to people. It is such a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. It's a fun read. So buy it and enjoy it. Jennie, I can't wait for people to read the rest of the story and
Yeah.
then connect. So it's going to be fun. How can people connect with you?
So I have a website, secondchanceonlove.com. And actually, there are so many people that we're finding that have stories kind of like ours, that, long lost loves that reconnected years later. And so I am loving to hear these stories. That's why we entered America's Favorite Couple competition. It was like, who has the ultimate love story? I wanted to get to know other people's stories and share. And then we won. I wasn't planning on that. I'm like, what? So I like to play it forward and just provide inspiration and hope. You don't know what's going to happen and who's going to come back into your life. You have no idea. But when you connect to the divine and God, He will take care of you. I promise. Like,
Mhm.
there is a plan. You have a plan and a purpose. And so we're on Instagram, Second Chance on Love, and Facebook, Second Chance on Love. And I also am starting to host a podcast, Second Chance on Love, Side B, because side A, the cassette tape, didn't work out. So side B might be better, right? So
Yes.
yeah, secondchanceonlove.com, and share your story with
Yeah.
me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So share your story. So cool.
Keep it going.
Jennie, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And anybody out there that's watching, if you know somebody who would enjoy this episode, please pass it on to them and let them enjoy it and tell them about the book and spread the love around. And yeah, keep your eyes on God and keep your faith alive and know that everything's going to be okay. So thank you for joining us. And I just want to say, I pray until we see each other again, that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.
Uh-huh.
Here we go. So I'm going to